So, hello, this is my contribution to the Getty Museum Challenge. So, the portrait of a halberdier by Pontormo depicts a young man standing before a fortress wall holding a halberd. So, the identity of the person is not certain, and the direct gaze and self-conscious gesture of the young man putting his hand on the hips are shocking. However, his face and slim figure indicate that he is a teenager, and the artist Jacopo da Pontormo is famous for his complex psychological research. So, in this portrait, he conveys the vulnerability, vulnerability of this young man. So, this portrait of Pontormo represents the mannerist movements of his time and is known for its over-proportion, stylized posture, and lack of clear perspective. So, to be honest, I didn't really like this painting because I'm not a very fan of portraits. I chose it because I had everything I needed to do the exact same replication. So, I can also add that the resemblance is striking, like it's shocking. So, I think I'm done. Thank you for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe and drop a like if you enjoyed. And see you next time.
The painter of this painting is Christopher Wood. This English painter lived during the 20th century. I have chosen this painting for two reasons. The first one is the man's attitude. He seems sad and bored. These feelings remind me my feelings during the containment. Indeed, during this period, I can't see my friends and my family, and every day looks like the precedent one. The second reason is the background of the painting. When I saw it, I immediately thought of my terrace, where we have approximately the same buildings and the same guardrail.
So this painting that I chose is entitled "The First One, the 21st Century Jesuit Man," and it was painted in 1969 by Barry Godber. So actually, this painting is related with the cover of the 1969 record album "Court of the Crimson King" by the group King Crimson. So right above, we can see different details, like in the nose or in the cheeks. So the expression is really explicit, as it shows that the character who is present is scared of something. Because he looks at the left, we can think that there is someone who is carrying him behind him. So actually, what I find interesting is that this painting is simplistic, but also shows so much details, like what I said in the cheeks or in the nose, and also the expression that is delivered. Also, what I find interesting is that it's actually easy to reproduce it, like what I have done. So I think that this painting is very interesting because it's not just simplistic and it has no meaning. No, it has lots of details in it.
Most people think that doing art is creating something gorgeous out of the ordinary. However, I think that art consists in transforming something and give its new form a value that is superior to the one of its previous form. Campbell's soup can, an art of painting by Andy Warhol, perfectly represents this conception of art. Here, Warhol makes something common of our everyday life a known piece of art. Having the ability to make a soup can, maybe the most mundane object on earth, a world-renowned artwork, is quite incredible. It's the simplicity and originality of the painting that makes its beauty, and even though the painting isn't really aesthetic, and the fact that even though it's a mere reproduction of an object, I admire Andy Warhol for his ability to make this painting world renowned. But most of all, I admire most of all his all the thinking behind this painting.
This painting is a very striking portrait of Joan Rhodes by Laura Knives, painted in 1955, nowadays located in the Royal Academy in London. Laura Knives was the first woman to be elected to full membership of the Royal Academy of Arts in 1936, and the first woman to receive a large retrospective exhibition at the Academy in 1965. Born in 1877, Knight had a long life, passing away in 1970, and a long and successful career working in oils, watercolors, etching, engraving, and dry point until well into the 1960s. She never departed from her figurative, realist tradition of her youth, and was, for this reason, in her heyday, one of the most popular painters in Britain. Joan Rhodes was born on April 30 in 1921 in London. She was a British performer, actress, writer, stern woman, and strong woman. Born into poverty in London, she and her siblings were deserted by their parents. Following unhappy spells in the workhouse, she left home at 14. After sleeping road in the street, she joined a traveling fair where she got the idea of her act after seeing a professional strong man at work. She could bend iron bars across her knee, in her mouth, and around her arm or neck. She could rip telephone directories, arm wrestle two men at once, and push small cars them off stage while men sat in them. Auditioned for Federico Fellini's film Le Casanova de Fellini in 1976, where she was to overpower Donald Sutherland in a wrestling match, which Joan found easy to do. However, the director and star both thought it would be embarrassing if such a normal-sized woman was to defeat the burly Sutherland, so the role instead went to Sandra Elaine Allen, who at that time was the world's tallest woman. Her autobiography, Coming on Strong, was published in 2007. One of her most famous personal quotes is, "I plan on growing old disgracefully." I chose this work of art for multiple reasons, but in particular because I was moved by the beauty of the look of this woman. She is little dressed, but she may seem weak, but it is actually the total opposite. Her story describes a strong, independent woman who knows how to assert herself. Whether the painter or the model, these two women are both two figures of the free woman who gets what she wants, despite the opinion of men around her and society.
Hello, today I'm doing this audio to kind of explain and put words on what I did with the portrait. So the painting that I tried to recreate is entitled Mary Lady Bay Dudley by Thomas Gainsborough, and it is a hand-painted oil portrait. I'd like to explain my choices by describing first the painting and its context. In 1689, the fall of monarchy gave artists the freedom to satisfy their own desires in public, while in France, painters were subject to the pressures of the Arts Academic Court. Therefore, the capital was very open to all talents. The painter's consecration followed his settling in Bath in 1759, where he became a founding member of the Royal Academy and competed successfully with William Hoare, who was another famous painter. He returned in 1774 to the capital and painted the 221 times 145 centimeters portrait almost 10 years later. Along with Reynolds, they were known as masters of the portraiture. More recently, there was an exhibition at the Luxembourg Museum in 2019, which honors the golden age of English paintings, containing this one that we're talking about, which was famous for being able to combine spontaneity and neoclassicism, but also because Gainsborough's portraits were usually intimates of the royal family. Today, the painting is a private collection located in London. So now I'm going to talk about why I chose it. I chose it because it points out a turning point, a key moment in history, which is the fall of monarchy, just like what we are experiencing today with the coronavirus. And also, I like the blurry effect and the uncertain features, which I tried to insert in the photo, and that show the uncertainty that we are dealing with and facing today for the same reason. Also, the background is dark and dull. She, nevertheless, remains white as if she was full of hope and serenity. And so she's also pointing with her finger and has a blank stare, which make her look preoccupied or worried about something. But she remains calm or maybe lost. So that's why I like this painting. It's because it sums up actuality and represents almost every kind of reaction people can have towards what we experience.
In order to participate to the Getty Museum Challenge, I decided to recreate the painting called The Black Mesa Landscape by the artist Georgia O'Keeffe. So this painting represents a landscape, actually it's a cliff that we can find in New Mexico. So on the background we can see many mountains, whereas on the foreground there is a cliff with some trees or plants at the bottom of it. So the reason why I chose this painting is because I think that the style is quite appealing because it's unusual when artists represent a landscape. As we can see, the multi-layered aspect of this mountain, as well as the technique of light and shades, are really interesting because on the one hand, it gives a more aesthetic perception of this painting. And on the other hand, I think that, usually artists tend to represent nature without being minimalistic. They try to do their best to be more precise, the more precise possible. But this artist has a total different vision of the way things should be. Moreover, regarding the colors that were used to represent this landscape, we can notice that there's a dominance of dark colors such as dark blue or black. But nevertheless, it doesn't remove the vibrant aspect of this painting. Even though the colors are dark, the painting still seems joyful and intriguing.
For my Getty Museum challenge, I chose the painting Girl with Balloon made by Banksy. Banksy was born in 1974 in Bristol in the United Kingdom. He is a famous British street artist. And the reason why I like this artist is quite simple. Part of his success is based on the allure of anonymity. There is a whole enigma all around him. Girl with Balloon is signed and dedicated on the reverse. It's a spray paint and acrylic on canvas mounted on board an artist's frame. The dimensions are 101 by 78 by 18 centimeters. It was executed in 2006 and this work is unique. Banksy first painted an image of a child reaching out to a red heart-shaped balloon in London in 2002. And with the inscription, "There is always hope." Other versions were made around in the city, but none of the original mirrors remain. In 2014, he reworked the Girl with Balloon image in support of the With Syria campaign, explaining the red balloon carries the girl above and away from the chaos below, beyond the burnt-out buildings and bullet-spotted walls. Also, in 2014, Justin Bieber had the image tattooed on his arm, and the version with Union Jack banner surfaced in 2017. This is the favorite UK artwork of all time. So those are the reasons of me falling in love for this genius artist and his most famous creation. Furthermore, when Banksy shredded his artwork the moment after it sold at an auction, he left many questions unanswered. What are we to make of this stunt? Well, actually, it only got more interesting when shredded, and more valuable, because it got twice more pricey. The frame is part of the work, and the artist posted on Instagram a video showing the construction of the frame, and he included the quote by Picasso, "The urge to destroy is also a creative urge." I like Banksy's work because it helps us see the gross power and balances all around us, even if they are imperfect and temporary and corruptible by side forces. Or perhaps we love them more because of those things. Banksy may seem like less of the pure icon cultural rebel he once was, but I personally appreciate his recent attempts at affecting change, however small, from the inside. As for my recreation of his artwork, I was inspired by the art of one-line drawings. The most famous example even dates back to the early 20th century, the one-line drawings made by Pablo Picasso. He took a complex, realistic example and simplified it into one single unbroken line. These drawings can look relatively simple to make, but capturing the true essence of the shape in just one line can be quite challenging.
For my Getty Museum Challenge subject, I chose Edward Hopper's Morning Sun from 1952. It is displayed at the Columbus Museum of Art. First, a quick presentation of Edward Hopper. He is a 20th century American painter pertaining mainly to the realist movement. He is known for being reluctant to discuss his art, believing that the answer to any question he may get is readily available just by looking at his work. As for Morning Sun, it's an oil on canvas painting portraying a woman with an empty look, sitting on her bed and facing a large window. I chose this painting because I, too, find myself looking through my window quite often lately. Looking at this painting, I am reminded of Flaubert's Emma Bovary, who looks through the window as a way to escape her dull life. I do that too. I sit and watch the clouds as a way to escape jailing quarantine, but before long, my look has turned empty and my thoughts have spiraled inwards, just like the lady on the painting. There's a very striking contrast between the warmth of the morning sun filling the room with light and the darkness of the woman's look, as well as the coldness of the room, which has no decoration whatsoever. I believe all of these elements make the woman on the painting a portrayal of that lonely, thoughtful, melancholic side we all have within us, a portrayal we can all then relate to.
Edward Hopper was an American painter from the realistic movement. He was born in 1882 in New York State and died in 1967 in the city of the same name. Edward Hopper derived his subject matter from two primary sources. One, the common features of American life, gas stations, motels, restaurants, theaters, railroads, and street scenes, and its inhabitants, and two, seascapes and rural landscapes. His best-known paintings include Night Hawks, Chop Suey, Automat, and Hotel Lobby. Self-Portrait is a painting made by Hopper in 1930. He represented himself maybe sitting on a chair, looking at us. He is in a very empty room. He wears a brown hat, a light blue shirt, and a dark blue jacket with a green or brown tie. He seems calm, serene, as if he could stay there all day long, staring at us, without ever saying a word. I chose this painting over many others because I thought it perfectly represented what Hopper was like in real life, an introvert who loved loneliness. In his works, he has always managed to show what was behind the American myth, behind the postcard landscapes, a hidden face, that of boredom, of the anguish of emptiness. Life is not always as we imagine, and often we face a reality that has nothing to do with this deceptive American dream.
Hello, so I chose to reproduce a painting by Edward Hopper. First of all, Edward Hopper was a realistic American painter and printmaker. He is considered one of the representatives of American realism because he painted the daily life of the middle classes. His works express nostalgia for a past America and reflect his personal vision of modern American life, and his characters are most often lonely and melancholy. So the Morning Sun, the painting that I chose, is an oil on canvas made in 1952, and we can see a young woman sitting on her bed looking at the morning sun through the windows. She is isolated and faces the sun impassively, and she is apparently lost in thought. She lets no emotion show through. She is pale and holds her leg, and her eye appears sightless. Her position and expression emphasize her isolation and loneliness. And actually she look outside, and we can see an ordinary city with buildings representing an impersonal urban life. This painting can be universal. Indeed, sitting on your bed thinking and looking at the sun is something banal that everyone can do on daily basis. So I really like the simplicity of the canvas, the color. We have soft color and a bright light. This returns a strong impression, and it was a lot of fun to reproduce it.
The painting I have chosen for the Getty Museum Challenge is The Red Dress by Michael G. Austin, a British painter from the 20th centuries. I decided to imitate this painting because it was the one who attracted me the most, and usually painters show people's faces in their art, but in this one the body and the red tone take all the place. It's like Michael Austin wanted to express emotions through the woman's position. For me, it reveals a sort of emotional exhaustion. It's like the woman was tired, overthinking, confused, and that's why the painting is so captivating for me.
From my window I gazed at the world, day by day, with the same posture, the same empty eyes staring at the same scenery. And yet, everything seemed so abstract, so surreal. Have you ever had that strange feeling of leaving the world behind, of being torn away from a reality that you thought was unbiased? Overnight, new hues come to the fore, patterns shift, and everything that was once so crystal clear suddenly turns into an inscrutable abyss. From my window I gaze at the world, now as then, and yet I fail to sense it. The phantom city finally makes sense to my newly veiled eyes. My city has vanished, its breath has faded, and its heart that once pulsed to the beat of myriads of sounds slowed under an invisible frozen tide. From my window I gaze at the world. Suddenly I recall a distant memory of the past, and yet I only vaguely remember the sound of the white cathedral bells coupled with Tchaikovsky's frantic swan paces. This profusion of sounds that used to enliven my hearing has now been annihilated by a brutal, deafening silence. Before leaving, I gazed at the world through my window for one last brief moment. I tried to awaken my senses so that I could perhaps feel the universe I once lived in. I had been unconsciously descending into the void, decimating any true memory in my mind. And then, suddenly, I could see a leaf trembling in the lifeless tree and hear an invisible bird's sweet song. While the world was regaining its former glory, it gazed at me and smiled.
The Young Lady with the Shiner is a work by the painter Norman Rockwell, who was born in 1894 and died in 1978. We can see in the painting a little girl sitting on a bench waiting to be received in the principal's office of her school. She's smiling, making us think that she's proud of the foolishness she made, and many clues indicate that the little girl has been involved in a fight, like her shiner, her messy hair, her dirty clothes, or even her knee bandage. We can also see in the background, through the open doorway, a young woman who can only be the teacher, looking in the direction of the little girl, who seems to be concerned about her well-being. The principal is sitting at his desk, looking surprised at the nonsense of the little girl. I choose to represent this work because it is rather funny and represents quite well the innocence that a child can have, but also because it reminds me a lot of the disobedient side I had as a child. And I found this artwork more interesting because this little girl breaks a little bit the norms of the society that says that girls must play with dolls and behave properly. On the painting, it represents more a kind of tomboy who plays fighting and having fun without paying attention to what people may think.
Hi, so the painting we're seeing right now is the triple auto-portrait by Norman Rockwell. So Norman Rockwell is an American painter and artist, and he's a part of the illustrative and figurative movement. Most of his pieces of art represent an aspect of the Americans' 20th century's daily life. And the piece of art I have chosen is the triple auto-portrait of Norman Rockwell himself. So the term triple refers to the three portraits we have here. So first, the mirror's reflection, and then the canvas that is being drawn, and finally the third autoportrait is the whole scene, as it is a painting itself. So the artist uses a mirror for the autoportrait and then draws his reflection on the canvas. I have chosen this painting because I think that here the artist is not trying to impress his audience or to come up with something beautiful, but is just showing his work as simple as it is, with no ornaments or light effects. And thus Norman Rockwell is more showing how an autoportrait is made and exposing his unfinished piece rather than seeking for recognition from his fellow painters. So even though the fact that I find this painting very interesting and that it fascinates me, there's still something drawing my attention, which is in the mirror's reflection, we can see that Norman Rockwell is wearing glasses, whereas on the canvas, the painting being drawn does not include glasses. Thank you.
This work of art by Andy Warhol is a can of soup. It's tomato soup. Originally, it depicted 40 different cans from Campbell's, that were different tastes. It's really good representation of pop art at its best with Andy Warhol, because it shows how you can make art from basically nothing, everyday objects that you have around the house. And that's something I really like, and that's why I wanted to do something connected to pop art, and I chose in some way to translate this can into Moroccan, changing the tomato soup into harira, and changing Campbell's by Farsi soups. It's, yeah, I appreciate this Getty Museum Challenge for the way that people can reappropriate the different works of arts.